Good day. This is M.H. Mapolan, your armchair philosopher, or as we say in Filipino, pilosopong bangko, ushering you into a thinking adventure. As you watch this video, I would ask you not just to interpret the world or indulge yourself towards an intellectual high. I hope that you can pick up something that could be of value and of use to you as you traverse this convoluted world of life. I would like to challenge yourself and ask, OEAN. You may ask, what does it mean? Well, in Filipino, simply, it stands for O-E. Ano ngayon? What now after this lecture? What can I take from it that I can use to make my life better, to make my thinking processes turn me into a person who can better respond to the challenges of this existence? So, pay attention. If you find something useful, remember it and make it a part of your Weltanschauung. It's German. It means your worldview. In Filipino, our pananaw. Then use it to guide your actions and make your own life sensible, purposeful, and better. Then these ideas will be like my weight in gold, valuable and important. If you find none, as one philosopher has once said, well, consign it to the flames, because it contains nothing but sophistry and illusion. In our own street vernacular, kalimutan mo na lang dahil langwenta. Forget it, it's useless. One final note. The following proceedings contain my own understanding of the concepts and ideas discussed. I may be wrong, and I invite you to read further and continue with this search for knowledge, meaning, and relevance. Of course, I hope you find use in this discussion I have entitled A Redefinition of the Concept of the Ought in the Context of the Filipino Family. Now let us begin. Let's start with the attributes of the Filipino family. In my readings, I was able to encounter a saying, no Filipino is alone. He is always with family. It is often said that family is the basic unit of any society. There are typical families all over the world. And then, there is the Filipino family, a unique entity which to me is the foundation of our being Filipino. It is on the bedrock of the Filipino family that Filipino culture and traditions are based on. It endures through time and adapts to changes that happen around us. The Filipino family is us, and we are the Filipino family. Perhaps the details of family experience you are experiencing now may be different from that which your own parents, your elder relatives have gone through. I believe that changes in practice, how you were raised, the technology and gadgets that were used before and now, language, literature, and music, so many different things born out in time may have happened. But the very foundation on which these elements are based on still remain. And they remain with us. These foundations, that of the Filipino family, are part of that which makes us Filipinos. There are challenges to these foundations brought about by globalization and the constant shrinking of the world due to advancement in technology, transportation, and the like. But these foundations of the Filipino family has remained with our ancestors and now are with us. The Filipino family is, to me, a very important factor in the much vaunted resilience that the Filipino is known for all over the world. It is the responsibility of my generation to nurture, protect, and let adapt this family factor and pass it on to you. I sincerely hope you take this to heart and see it through as you live your life now, wherever you may go. I hope you learn from this and continue on the responsibility, imparting, nurturing, and protecting these family values to those succeeding you in the future. Pay attention and try to relate the discussions to our own experience so that you may confirm and validate them from your very own experience. What I will be discussing are what I believe to be unique key attributes of the Filipino family that endure through time and contribute to our ultimate Filipino family, and how they affect the totality of morality for Filipinos. They may be manifested in different practices. What I will be discussing are what I believe to be unique key attributes of the Filipino family that endure through time and contribute to our ultimate Filipino identity, and how they affect the totality of morality for Filipinos. They may be manifested in different practices and emerging modern traditions, but nevertheless are still with us, continuing to strengthen us as Filipinos through whatever challenges may come our way, whenever and wherever in the world we may be. At the same time, they determine a national moral fiber that may not be in keeping with a positivist posturing that we are supposed to follow, what with our history being influenced by Spanish and American colonizers. There are 8 attributes which I believe form the core of the Filipino family and determine a moral pattern for Filipinos. Strong family ties which are flexible and expandable, respect for authority and care for our elders reflected in a strong yet gentle family hierarchy, a strong love bond between parents and children, a strong commitment to the formation and strengthening of Filipino values, and skills to our children and fellow Filipinos, a high regard for responsibility to family welfare, extending the family from the immediate core to relatives and even to other persons, the interconnected devotion to family and God, and the Filipino family as the home of the Filipino heart and spirit to which every Filipino wishes to return to. Let's start with the strong family ties. Do you have grown-up relatives that are still living with you in your own house? Do you have your lolo and lola relatives from provinces studying in your city, titos and titas, even older ates and kuyas with their wives, husbands, and children still living in your house? If you have, you are actually experiencing the manifestations of the Filipinos' strong family ties, the unbreakable bond that exists between and among Filipinos. For us Filipinos, family is everything. It keeps us together through problems or prosperity, and through health or sickness, through progress or calamity. Your earliest memory of childhood, even in these modern times, should be your mother and father giving you close and complete attention. Whether you are rich, poor, powerful, or not, your family will be your earliest happy place. Picture events like Christmas, baptisms, birthdays, weddings, and even funerals in the Philippines. And it is most certainly a family gathering. Early on, you are being cared for by relatives and kin, as Filipinos do not subscribe to babysitters. Early on, you are introduced to cousins, lolos and lolas, titos and titas, and even the most distant of relatives. You most probably have felt this closeness, this bond, which provides you with a feeling of security and safety from anything evil and closeness to everyday blessings. It is always a treat to be with relatives. Family will then include godfathers, godmothers through baptism or confirmation for Catholics. Arising from this tradition of strong family ties is an accompanying moral persuasion to live dictated by such ties. The idea of moral astuteness may depart from Western concepts of the ought to be, or roughly translated in Filipino, ang nararapat, as the concept becomes defined by the concept of familial piety. As such, things that may be morally acceptable in one context may be inappropriate in Filipino families. Take the seemingly innate duty to defend a member of the family against perceived enemies. Here, the standards of good, bad, right, or wrong take a backstage, and family members are known to fight on the side of the family members regardless of whoever is in the wrong. In Mindanao, the practice of rido, where one family fights another to the death, accentuates this Filipino reality. In the Tagalog areas, this may not be as practiced, although history has anecdotal references to ubusan ng lahi in Cavite, in Batangas, or clan massacres. The overriding value becomes family honor, and the ought to be sides with it. When you are old enough and travel outside your locality or even overseas, connection with relatives will be a valuable commodity. Here you may probably experience another miracle, the miracle of extended family, where any Filipino you see will feel like family. Incurring favor, generally frowned upon in the West as inappropriate and immoral, and which in other locations may constitute graft and corruption, is looked up as serving the family, and at certain times is acceptable. This is the Filipino family bond known all over the world. For me, it is a feeling of well-being, protection, kinship, nurture, camaraderie, and belongingness and warmth to something big and desirable. A feeling which always suggests that wherever and whenever you are, in whatever circumstances, good or bad, you can always count on family. Western standards of positive morality do not govern. That bond which says, sama-sama tayo, we are together, kasangga kita, I am with you, starts with our own immediate family. It then extends to our relatives and kins. Eventually, it extends to all Filipinos who regard each other as one family. Within our country, it extends to even foreigners who are made to feel quote-unquote, at home and with family in every Filipino home, however small and modest it may be. This creates an extended version of the family and further blurs the idea of the ought to be. Take, for example, the idea of vote buying during local and national elections. There is already legislation punishing such acts with penal sanctions. However, in every election, without fail, vote buying is always present. Moreover, it becomes family business, with whole families participating in the act. Moral inappropriateness of this act seems to have escaped the common Filipino's psyche. Having participated in various election processes all over the country, I've heard this happen every election time. And it's not the total amount used in the vote buying process that determines who wins, which totally negates the graft concept of the vote buying process. There is even a story when a poor candidate who said he cannot compete with his rival who was dispensing at that time 200 pesos for every voter when he can only afford 50 pesos for every voter, was counseled to buy at 50 anyway, since it is not the amount of money that matters. What matters, according to the counselor, was the fact that he is somehow supporting families of voters, which is counterfactual to the narrative of graft in vote-buying instances. In the story, the candidate won and became mayor of a city. Strong family ties that bind a nation, and dare I say, binds that nation with the rest of the world, making the Filipino nation a standout model for the global community. That dream that everyone in the world should feel like family. Next, we go to respect and care for elders. The terms lolo and lola mean more than their English translations. Attached to the term is the hierarchy of respect that can only be Filipino. With the term is an unspoken placemat that accords them a certain level of authority, that gives their words and opinions precedence over younger voices due to their more advanced age. In the Filipino family exists a structure based on seniority. The bunso, or the youngest, occupies the lowest rank, followed by the kuya or ate, the elder sibling. In the family core, the tatay, father, or nanay, mother, lays down the rules of the family. They are in turn subordinate to their own parents. Those in the lower rank has to refer to those in the higher ranks with terms of respect. That's why we have koyang, ate, manong, manang, and so on. At times, the advice of elders may run contrary to perceived norms of morality, especially when this pertains to obtaining and dispensing favors to younger members of the family, for example. This, however, is not considered a morally inappropriate act by the elder, who is considered to be taking care of the best interest of the family. And the rest of the family goes along. Now take, for example, the idea of caring for old, sick relatives. It may not be considered immoral and improper by Western standards to put elderly relatives in foster care homes, home for the aged, and so on and so forth. Within the context of the Filipino family, however, not caring for sick, elderly relatives constitutes moral impropriety, as caring for elderly members of the family is part of our ought to be, part of the nararapat, and it is considered kawalan ng utang na loob or lack of debt of gratitude to neglect or refuse to care for an elderly family member. The Filipino family pays respect to their elders by taking care of them within the household until death. This is the ultimate level of respect accorded elders. Elsewhere in the world, elders are put in homes and left to spend the rest of their lives in relative seclusion from the rest of the family. This is unacceptable in a Filipino household. Elders are listened to for advice and accorded care in the twilight years of their lives. It is considered inconsiderate not to do so. That's care for the elders. Now let's go to that bond between adults and children. Have you had a cousin or relative staying with you, cared for by your parents for one reason or another? Have you seen your parents filled with worry every time you have a fever or a cold? Have you experienced being worried yourself whenever any of your parents are sick or even sad? If you have felt that strong love bond existing between Filipino adults and children or siblings. This bond creates a natural flow of care between children and adults. In turn, the young ones have a special obligation to take care of the elders, whether they be related by blood or not. As Filipinos, this easily translates to a care bond between Filipinos, as if all Filipinos belong to one big family and contributes to forming a strong moral bond, which may not be in accordance with some perceived moral standards, but nevertheless forms an invisible moral thread that unites families in particular and the Filipino nation in general. Then there is the strong commitment to uphold cherished Filipino values. The Filipino family is a family that nurtures its own. Nurture, however, includes imparting upon family members values that Filipinos cherish and want to uphold. How they are taught depends on the time and traditions of discipline. Before, they are taught by pamalo at pangaral, stick and advice, and involves corporal punishment in order to inculcate values. Nowadays, corporal punishment may be frowned upon, but imparting values remains to be an important aspect of child and adult education in the family. There is the urge in every Filipino to push on with old values and traditions towards other Filipinos. This constitutes elements of a moral fiber which binds Filipinos. Okay, now let's go to responsibility for the family welfare. Every Filipino considers the welfare of the family members as important. While other non-Filipino cultures emphasize independence from the family, the Filipino welcomes dependence and goes out of its way to provide for family. My friends in Batangas tells about how Batangueños go out of their way in the olden days, spreading all over the country hawking mosquito nets and slippers so that they may support their families. This is evident nowadays in the phenomenon of overseas Filipino workers working thousands of miles away from their families just to be able to take care of them. For Filipinos, taking care of an extended family constitutes an unwritten and unspoken moral obligation of everyone. This value has been passed on to even young Filipinos working abroad who allocate a big portion of their salaries to support elder parents in the country. They endure untold hardships and challenges in their chosen places of work. It takes some people years before being reunited with their families. When they finally have that chance, their thoughts are still to provide more for them. Have you ever received a balikbayan box from a returning relative from abroad? So, there you are. Some foreigners frown upon this tradition of care and regard it as mendicancy. I, however, regard this as a source of strength for Filipinos and a necessary ingredient that contributes to the strength of the Filipino race. Then there is the Filipino family extension. You do not have to be related by blood to experience the benefits of being within the Filipino family. It's amazing that these benefits are extended to non-relatives. Any guest of the Filipino house will experience being treated like a member of the family. This trait, which goes beyond hospitality, allows the non-blood relative to be treated like an important member of the family. He is given the best accommodation and fed the best food. Families are known to kill their most cherished pet, hen, so that they can provide tinola, chicken soup for the guest. Wherever there are Filipinos, this family extension exists. Even abroad, Filipinos take care of family guests, whether blood relatives or not, extending the family warmth beyond the Philippine borders, making the globe a Filipino village. These also form part of the moral fiber which binds Filipinos everywhere. Then there is family devotion to God. The family that prays together stays together. It has been said. For Filipinos, there is always another addition to the family, the creator entity, God, the concept of God. Family tradition extends to filial devotion to God by no less than the members of the family. Even before the Spaniards came, the concept of a creator has always been part of the Filipino household, with feasts dedicated to His honor. Devotion to the Creator allows the Filipino to spread that ever-strengthening faith among family members and, by and large, to the Filipino community as a whole. When I was young, we were strictly told to be home before the oración, Angelus, usually 6 o'clock, so that everyone can pray together. Even in predominantly Muslim communities, prayer and going to the masjid or the mosque is a family affair. And when Filipinos pray, intentions for the good of the family forms part of everyone's prayer. The Western individual tradition, where value is placed on one's independence, has never taken hold on the Filipino race, even after hundreds of years of colonization. What do we have? We have a Filipino moral fiber. These ties emanating from the essential Filipino family has drastically redefined the concept of the moral ought. It does not necessarily conform to the national legal fiber, and at certain times are at odds with what is traditionally accepted definitions of the ought to be. Yet these attributes of the Filipino family constitute one solid moral fiber that binds one nation and makes it indivisible. I believe that our internal moral system has not taken into consideration its grassroots-based moral fiber. As such, ordinary Filipinos constituting a majority of its population still cannot fully relate to the corresponding national moral and legal system, which makes it dysfunctional up to a certain extent. Perhaps in the future, more effort to reach into the deepest recesses of the Philippine family and culture can provide the impetus to finally integrate the existing system with the national morality. Then, the concept of the ought to be will finally take a distinctly Filipino flavor. Thank you very much.